Whenever I think catastrophe, again, this is a much smaller scale, but I remember this distinctly, is we had a church in Fort Worth that wanted to paint their family life center. Sounds like pretty routine, pretty basic, not a big deal. Well, what they wanted to do was have folks within the community come and paint and do everything for them. As they were leaving, one of the folks that had painted threw a cigarette into a trash can. Paint thinner, paint, everything else, not a good combination. Hour or two later, Fort Worth Fire Department calls the church. We've got a significant fire at your location. All of a sudden, you have a ministry that has to suspend operations. Anytime these situations come up, I think again it's a lesson learned of it can happen to you. What is your plan, and what is the insurance policy's role in that plan? I think is what's key.
Catastrophic losses. Now, catastrophic is a big word, maybe a scary word, but it is an insurance term that refers to a specific kind of thing that happens that has an impact not just to one organization or building, but to a large number, and really has an impact to us all, and should help you decide how you build your insurance plan for your organization. But how? Here to talk about that is our friend Zach Mize. He's a senior agent and partner with Lightwell in the state of Texas, and he has a wealth of knowledge related to catastrophic losses. So let's get right into our conversation with Zach. Well, as promised, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome in Zach Mize. He is a senior agent and partner for Lightwell in the state of Texas. Zach, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, on top of just knowing you for a while and being friends, I also know that you have been working in the insurance field for more than a decade there in Texas. How long have you been serving churches with insurance solutions in Texas?
Almost 19 years.
Okay, so coming up on 2 decades there. And in that time, you have been exposed to all kinds of different new things. But Texas is not immune to catastrophic weather events, catastrophic insurance events. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're talking about CAT, if we want to use the abbreviation, which I know we will a lot through this conversation. We're talking about CAT losses. So let's start with the basics. What in the insurance industry qualifies as a catastrophic or CAT loss?
Yeah, great question. I would say the technical answer is 25 million. Any single occurrence that exceeds 25 million is typically what they determine as a CAT.
And that's not 25 million for just one building. That's an event that results in
Correct.
$25 million of loss.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Gotcha.
I would just maybe add to that if I can. It may be a little bit different if you ask the local church. To your point, if a fire takes their building out or a tornado takes their building out, to them that would be a catastrophic loss, sure. But if we're talking technical terms, insurance carriers, what do they look at? Typically, it's 25 million.
That's a really important distinction because the personal part of that for a church, it's going to feel every bit catastrophic, even if it's just $100,000 loss or $1 million loss versus 25 million. So we are, for the purpose of today's conversation, talking more at that industry or national level when we say that. And that's important because those events that affect large numbers of churches, but maybe not my church, still affect my church at some level. And we'll get to that as well. From your perspective, what you know in the industry, how have these kind of losses, CAT losses, evolved over the past 19 years with the increase in severe weather events?
Yeah, I mean, the running joke is when is it going to end? Kind of when is there a light at the end of the tunnel? I mean, every chart you look at, every article you read, everything is on the rise. Frequency, severity. You look at these what now they call $100 billion years. I think it was in 2022 there was $125 billion loss. Loss history losses that year. That's significant. So I think the short answer is it's on the rise. I don't know that it's stopping anytime soon. For us, not that I want to relate everything to the South because we're not just Southern agents, but for us in the South, I think a real mix of what I would call a peril, so a cause of loss, has been interesting. You look at in the South, typically we're at least we look at wind and hail is the two primary perils. Well, when 2021 came, we all learned what a freeze was. And so I think a mix of perils that perhaps no one was expecting in a geography no one was expecting. So now not only do you have these insured losses on the rise, frequency on the rise, now you're introducing new perils that nobody really thought about. And for us, like I'm in the DFW area, you've got a high density of assets, of buildings. Well, DFW is prone to wind and hail. You start adding in buildings and a higher density, it could have an impact because now you're introducing more buildings into a more vulnerable, zone, if you will. So, um, yeah, so on the rise. That's the short answer.
Well, it is, but I think all those details are important because it's not, like you said, just on the rise in terms of the number, but there's a variety there
Absolutely.
now that maybe wasn't there before. And this is crazy coincidence, but I actually was in Dallas. I don't think we saw each other on this trip, but that February in 2021, I just
Okay.
happened to have a trip to Dallas during that freeze, and the feel was apocalyptic.
Yeah. Our swimming pool froze.
That is
Like that's
crazy.
our kids were walking on the swimming pool. Like that shouldn't happen. So yeah, I mean, again, you look at just the expected losses of wind and hail, it happens. But now you introduce the unexpected of a freeze, and how do you price for that? How do you account for that? So yeah, I would say big evolution for sure.
For sure. Okay, so there's gonna be some overlap, I would guess, in this question, but what
Sure.
are the common types of cat losses that churches and ministries should be aware of that could happen?
Yeah, again, if we're using cat as a, $25 million number, it's gonna be the tornadoes, it's gonna be the hurricanes, perhaps the earthquakes, things like that. It's not gonna be an isolated fire or things. Again, locally at that local church, yes, an isolated fire could be catastrophic. But as far as terms of the insurance business, I would say it's your larger storms, things like that. So
Yeah, and it's those are hard to prepare for because they're so widespread and uncontrollable. But if there are steps to take, what are steps that you would say in preparation for or expectation of cat losses? What do you advise ministries to do?
So I think first thing is identify your assets, your buildings. What all do you have? I think is key. I think looking at those hazards or those perils that are probably most common. Again, we probably aren't going to see an earthquake in Texas. I don't know that I need to be prepared for that. Of course, again, we didn't think freezes were going to come, and here we are. So I think identifying those perils, I think is important. I think trying to, if there's a way to quantify that. So in the insurance business, we talk about PMLs. It's a fancy term of probable maximum loss. In the event that something were to happen at my building, what's the most probable maximum loss that I could have? So you can work with your agent to really determine, okay, if the tornado hit, if the hurricane hit, what kind of damage am I looking at? I've got a wood frame building and I've got a fire resistive masonry non-combustible. Okay, of the two, the wood frame is going to have, potentially some impact. So I think just really assessing what does your campus look like? What are your perils, most probable perils? And how do you prepare for that and stress test it? I think makes a lot of sense. What would you do if the tornado took this building? What would you do if the earthquake took the building? I think makes a lot of sense. And again, I probably throughout this pod will really stress the importance of a local agent, of sitting down, having these conversations is important. At the end of the day, we sell a product we hope our folks never have to use, but we hope when they have to use it that it's written correctly. And so, identifying those things and ultimately trying to mitigate that as best you can. And if you can't mitigate it, transfer it to an insurance policy that will cover you. Essentially, is how I look at it.
That's really good. And that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is really what role does insurance even play when it comes to massive acts that can cover an entire city or geography like cat losses? What are the essential coverages that a church or ministry or nonprofit should have in place to be ready for that?
So I would say the purpose of insurance, one is more or less an infusion of capital. You're at a loss, and insurance can provide capital, can provide cash to replace, repair, rebuild, restore, whatever that looks like. So I think that's the purpose of it. Again, you've transferred that to an insurance policy, you've paid a premium for that. Now it's time for the insurance policy to show up and deliver. And quite honestly, that's the only time we get to perform. It's mission critical at that point. So I think, again, funding is the whole purpose. When you look at core pieces of a policy, when you look at property insurance, you want to see wind, you want to see hail, you want to see fire, perhaps wildfire in that definition of fire. If you're in an area that's got seismic activity, you want to have earthquake. If you're in a flood zone, you want to have flood. But at the end of the day, I think identifying those perils that are most common to your area, buying an insurance policy that covers those perils, and then the two pieces, regardless of where you are, that I think are key is ministry continuation, business interruption coverage. In the event of a loss, how do I continue to pay my financial obligations? How do I pay my staff? How do I pay for their benefits? Things like that, that business interruption, ministry continuation can fund. So I think having the business interruption piece is key. The other piece, and this is probably more geared towards churches, is ordinance and law, because you've got a lot of buildings that are built in the 1960s that aren't ADA compliant. Okay, now you've got to, install wheelchair ramps and wider door frames in the restrooms, and you've got to have a sprinkler system, fire alarms. Insurance can literally cover all of those things if it's written correctly.
Those are really good ministry-specific coverages for catastrophic losses, but I wanna double back to that ministry continuation one just because when I became aware of this, I felt like it was revelatory because it's different than what you would do if you were a commercial business. So
Yep.
some of that, like, salary replacement because you had to shut down operations, when you talk ministry continuation, churches really can't afford, and I mean that both from a financial and also just a missional standpoint, they can't afford to stop operations so that they can collect the coverage to pay their employees. So can you talk about how that coverage, if it's geared for a ministry, should perform?
The premise or the idea behind it would be, let's look at your historical records. Let's see what giving has looked like. And then essentially supplement that, because the reality is most people in the event of a claim will rally around the steeple. It's just the reality. Folks want to be a part of it. The challenge becomes, how does that occur? How does that not occur when it's a catastrophe? Now you're talking, it's not just your church. Now you're talking every member in your congregation's home has been impacted. I mean, that's the significance of it. And that's, again, I don't want to, go too geek on insurance, but that's the beauty of what we do. If it's written correctly, if we're building a plan and sitting down with our clients and having these conversations, the insurance policy can fund all of those things.
Yeah.
Oftentimes what I'll see is an insured say, "Oh, Zach, I just want as much coverage as I can buy." Well, okay, well, within reason. I mean, we could buy 10 million, 20 million, 50, pick a number, but at some point, to your point, they're operating off tithe dollars. It's not responsible for me or for them to just say, "Give me as much as I need." No, instead, let's build a plan that works, and then the insurance policy can fund that plan. So it's really unique. Again, if it's the isolated event that takes a church, it's a fire, things like, man, everybody rallies around that. And typically, traditionally, offerings go up in those situations. But still, you're going to have, okay, I've got to get with a local school district. Where am I going to move our worship services? What do I do for day? We got a daycare Monday through Friday. What do I do for that? And it's all those kinds of things that, again, the importance of a local agent sitting down with you, having these conversations, and building an insurance policy that aren't just apples to apples. Oh, just copy whatever we have and just give me a lower price. That's not what we're in the business of doing.
That's really good. And, it really speaks to when you hear catastrophic loss, you hear a number like 25 million, that can kind of like go right over my head because it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like a number I can get my hands around. It's too big to even understand. But you have, I just know, especially unfortunately in the state of Texas, you have walked alongside ministries and nonprofits who have been impacted by this very specifically. So, could you give us kind of some specific examples or stories of a catastrophic loss that was big in the industry, but how a church that you've helped walked through that and ended up recovering from that?
Yeah, thankfully, I've not had a $25 million loss. If I had, I would not be on this pod, I can assure you. So, so so thankfully, that has not occurred, but,
Yeah.
again, I will say my takeaway from the freeze in '21 was, again, we're having to prepare ourselves for things that we never thought we'd have to be prepared for. What is a water valve shutoff device, and why is that important? Until 2021 occurred, it was, "Hey, install the water sensor." Well, then the mindset became, well, if the sensor goes off, there's already water in the building. That doesn't really help anything. And so I would say helping folks kind of prepare for those things that they thought they'd never have to prepare for. And so it was a lot of just kind of learning of, hey, what can we do? Are there things we can do as far as heating in the building? Are there things we can do as far as just simply opening doors, opening ceiling tiles, things like that, that I think, again, trying to be prepared for things that you weren't ever we never thought we'd have to do that down here in the South, but we did. To me, whenever I think catastrophe, again, this is a much smaller scale, but I remember this distinctly, is we had a church in Fort Worth that wanted to paint their family life center. Sounds like pretty routine, pretty basic, not a big deal. Well, what they wanted to do was have folks within the community come and paint and do everything for them. So they came in, agreed to it. Yep, let's absolutely do this. They came in, painted everything, looks great. As they were leaving, one of the folks that had painted threw a cigarette into a trash can. Paint thinner, paint, everything else, not a good combination. Hour or two later, Fort Worth Fire Department calls the church. We've got a significant fire at your location. It was their family life center. That's where the high school kids come and play basketball. That's where they run their food bank. That's where they run their clothing and thrift. Like, all of a sudden, you have a ministry that has to suspend operations because they've got to replace drywall, painting, baseboards, a gym floor. Thankfully, it wasn't a whole a total loss, but at the end of the day, it was impactful. So, anytime these situations come up, I think, again, it's a lesson learned of, it can happen to you. What is your plan, and what is the insurance policy's role in that plan? I think is what's key.
All very good. And is that ministry back up on its feet? Are
They
they
are.
good?
They are. That was
That's really
about a
good to hear.
$3 million loss, but it wasn't 25 million.
And that's why we're having you here today
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because you're still on your feet, you're still able to do this for ministries.
Thankfully,
So,
thankfully.
let's talk about that financial component though. For a church, a ministry, a nonprofit, what is the budgetary and planning impact of a catastrophic loss? And I think I want to ask this two ways, but I'll let you answer first and I might have a follow-up.
Absolutely. So I would say, again, this concept nowadays, kind of the buzzword in the industry is insurability. What are you doing to effectively make you an insurable case to an insurance company? And so if you have a cat loss, or you have multiple small losses, whatever it may be, insurance companies, at least in today's market, say, hey, we're going to move on to the next one. And so I think the short term is, you're going to struggle to find insurance. I think, if you can find it, it's going to be incredibly expensive. I think long term, it's going to have an impact on you for multiple years. I mean, we've talked at length about the freeze that occurred in '21. Folks are still having to, essentially, if you will, pay for that because that's still on their 5-year history. So in '26, that will roll off. But if you were new in January of '25, you're still having to account for it. So they don't get it until January of '26. So, again, short term is the difficulty of just trying to find insurance. And I would say short and long term is, if you can find it, again, what's the impact financially? Because at the end of the day, you operate based on tithe dollars. We don't want you to have to spend large amounts of money on insurance. We want it to be competitive. We want it to fit within a budget. But if there's cat losses, we've also got a balance too of the expected losses, the unexpected losses, and these unknown perils. And how do we build that into an insurance program? So I think, yes, absolutely, there's impact short term and long term.
That's really good. Okay, so I got a quick follow up on this because
Okay.
I'm just sitting here imagining what if I'm a ministry leader who all the way through 2021 with the freeze or 2022 and 2023 with all these different billion-dollar events, none of them ever happened to me, but my price of my insurance is still going up. Can you tell me why?
That's a great question. Man, that is hot seat stuff, dude. That's good. That's good. So, I mean, the reality is we all share in it. I mean, that's the easy answer, but that's just the reality is when you have $125 billion of losses in 2022, somehow that's got to be balanced out. And so I would say instead of, focusing so much on, "Hey, the spotlight is on us, everybody's paying it," what are we doing to prevent it? What are we doing to get out of it? And so it's the conversations we have of, "Hey, church, you've had a $5,000 deductible for 30 years and you've never had a claim. What if we increase that to 25,000? Zach, I don't wanna do that, I don't wanna do that." Well, what if you would have done that 30 years ago? How much premium would you have saved at that point? And so again, to me, and I stress this, I coach softball and baseball teams, so I always tell them control the controllables, you know. I can't control what the church down the street's doing or the losses they have and the impact it's going to have on me. All I can do in my role is take a deductible that makes sense, file claims that make sense. I'm working with a church right now, huge ministry. They filed 2 claims that clearly don't even hit their deductible. So now they've got claims on their record that are essentially closed as non-payment. They've got 2 instances of a hail claim and a sprinkler leakage claim that are gonna be on their history for 5 years, and nothing's gonna be paid out.
For someone like me who is largely my exposure to insurance is just consuming it through my home and auto, it's good to know that there's an entire industry that when those events are happening across the country, the risk, the spread of risk and the sharing of the cost of that, it goes to everyone.
It
It
does.
trickles down and everyone has to then help make sure there's enough money for it to keep happening to all of us. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. So then you go back to what you were just saying. What do I have control over as a consumer of insurance, particularly when I'm the decision maker on behalf of an organization? Can I increase my deductible and bring down premium a little bit? Or what are the other levers I can pull? Because the environmental factors, like you said at the beginning, it's not stopping and it's
No,
not going away and the
no.
variety is going up. So you have to focus on what you can control because there's so much
There
that you
is.
can't.
Yeah, absolutely. We joke all the time, like, is there like some type of bubble that could go over a building, over a car? I mean, but again, you have a bubble and then it freezes. So I mean,
Right.
that it's just a challenge of, again, I think for so long, all of us have been this way as consumers. Hey, the air conditioning's not working, call my insurance guy. Hey, the window's leaking, call my insurance guy. Hey, the landscaper just threw a rock up and hit the windshield, call the insurance guy. And unfortunately, you stack all of those somewhat expected losses now on top of unexpected losses, unexpected perils. It's a recipe for disaster. And so again, I will say there's been, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. I feel like there is perhaps some light at the end of the tunnel. I know 24 was a fairly decent year. 25 was so far, Lord willing, will end it as a good year. So I hope that things are starting to correct themselves. But yeah, it's really the mindset shift of a transaction, a maintenance. I'm just going to call when this happens, as opposed to, hey, it's a window leak. I've got a window guy that can take care of that for me. I don't need to call the insurance guy. And this church in Austin is a perfect example of, I want to be able to give them the very best, but I've got 2 claims that nothing's been paid out. And now I've got to explain to underwriting they never should have filed those claims.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and I love too what you're saying about that mindset shift when it comes to a ministry that has this kind of network or this group of people that care about the organization, care about the ministry going forward. You should tap that network for things that have simple solutions, like a window leak, like the rock that gets thrown into the wall. Those are things that, like, you know, Someone in the church probably has a connection to a guy that keeps it off of your insurance policy. And
Yes.
then you start to put yourself more and more in the driver's seat because the things that are out of your control are always going to be out of your control.
100%. And again, I will stress the importance of the local agent. When that situation occurs, to call the agent and say, "Hey, this is what happened. What are your thoughts?" Church, thanks for reaching out. That sounds like an $8,000 claim. Remember at the renewal, we talked about increasing your deductible to 25,000. If we file it, it's going to close as non-pay. There's nothing going to be paid out. Now you're going to have a claim on your on your record. Let's not even do that. Hey, Zach, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yep, I remember that. Not a problem.
It's really good.
And it's really, again, shifting the mind from a higher deductible, a reserve. I think of another account when I first met with them. This was 10, 12 years ago. They had $100,000 deductible at that point, even long ago. I mean, they were already ahead of it. And I remember the next renewal, he said, "Zach, what's 250,000 look like?" Okay, let's run the numbers. Ran the numbers. He said, "Man, that makes financial sense. We've got a reserve. We're not calling you unless the roof's gone." The next year at renewal, "Hey, what's 500,000 look like?" Wow, okay. I mean, are we just gonna keep going? The next year, "Hey, what's 600,000 look like?" I think eventually they tapped out at 600,000. But I mean, the whole idea was, hey, we've had 100,000 for all these years. We've never used it. Why not change and increase that deductible, save on our premium? And again, you're showing the insurance company, I'm insurable. I'm a risk you would like to insure.
Right.
That
No
is so
matter
key.
what the
Eh,
rest of the catastrophic
100
environment would look like, you can place a safe bet on me as an insurable
100%.
risk.
And that is so critical today. That is so critical.
That's very good. Okay, so a couple of more questions. I really want to be respectful of your time. This has been such a good conversation. But when you're talking with ministry leaders or nonprofit leaders, are there any common misconceptions that you have to help them kind of get over or understand better when it relates to catastrophic losses?
Yeah, I would say, one, again, the mindset of it can't happen. It won't happen here. I think is the number one thing. And again, I don't want to say I'm thankful for 2021. I'm not. That was a catastrophe. Oof, man, on so many levels. But again, the opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, we've got to prepare for what we may not be prepared for. So I think that mindset of it can't happen here, I think just get rid of that. And then the other piece I would say is a term we often hear, and it just makes my skin crawl, is all risk. Oh, our insurance policy is all risk. It covers everything. I got news for you. It doesn't cover everything. You need to read the fine print. Again, you've heard me numerous times say rely on an agent. Understanding again your geography, your location, your building type. What's the building used for? How old is it? I mean, all those things are important to build a policy that responds in the time of a loss. And so I think an often misconception is, oh, my insurance policy covers it all. It probably doesn't. And when's the last time you've looked at it? When's the last time you've met with your agent to walk through it? Nobody uses all risk language anymore. It's special perils, it's basic perils, it's broad perils. All risk, no more, no more. So I think that's a misconception. Is well, I buy insurance for it, and
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with a ministry or a nonprofit. Well, you do have wind and hail, but it's got a 10% deductible. Do you understand what that means? I have no idea. It's 10% of the claim. It has nothing to do with the claim. And so helping them understand that, I think, is just the misconception of I buy insurance, it's all the same.
Wow,
It's not all
that's
the
really
same.
good. Yeah, and they should be empowered to ask those questions of their local agent, and I think that's a really good empowering message for ministries who might look at cat losses and be like, "I don't know where to begin." You should
Right,
talk to
right.
someone who knows this industry and can help you, make your plan really practical for your organization. Okay, 2 more questions, one about insurance, one about you. Uh, if a ministry experiences a catastrophic loss, what are some immediate steps in the aftermath that they should plan to do? And I know that could go a lot of different ways because the cat losses are different. It's different events. But what would you say to that?
I would say if people are involved, protect your people. That's priority number one. Get your people safe, whatever that looks like. I would say probably the second most important thing would be identify or I guess, communicate with the key stakeholders. I'm the insurance guy. Notify your insurance agent. Obviously, if I didn't say that, I'd be in trouble. But in the event of a cat claim, call the insurance agent. I would say your board members. I would say if you are a ministry tied to a denomination, make sure your denominational office is aware. If it's a local Baptist association or your Methodist conference or whatever that looks like, make sure they know. Because again, to your point earlier about network, they may be able to provide volunteers and folks that can help and contractors and whatnot. So I think that's important. And I think honestly, this day and age, we have information readily available. So getting ahead of it with your congregation, getting ahead of it with those that are within your church, I think is key. And clear, concise communication. They don't need to know every single detail about every single thing. Just, hey, this is what occurred. This is our plan. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the only time insurance gets to perform, if you think about it. And so if it's done correctly, I'm not going to say it's going to be seamless because I think, again, another misconception I didn't address earlier is that, well, insurance will cover it. And a lot of folks forget the interruption it has on your ministry. I mentioned earlier the church that, hey, it's their family life center. They can't have basketball. They can't do a food bank. They can't do clothing and thrift distribution. All those things are impactful. And so I think again, protecting your people, notifying those within the church, and then I think just getting it out to the church of, hey, here's what happened. Here's what we as a church have proactively thought about. Again, back to the lifeboat drill and all those things. Um, and here's our plan going forward. And I would say that probably again, one of the, I don't know what's most important, but documenting things, keeping photos, keeping, videos of things, keeping receipts. If you're having to go buy tarps or generators, keeping all those things makes a lot of sense. So that's kind of the one, two, three, four, I guess you could say.
No, that's really
So,
good and super practical, which
yep,
in those events, having some kind of practical thing to hold on to make it feel like you can do something is a really helpful thing. So thank you for those ideas. Now, last question. This is about you. So this is the Lightwell podcast. Obviously, you're working for Lightwell in the state of Texas. I know you, so I feel like I have a gut feeling for this answer, but what does it mean to you to serve churches under the name Lightwell in the state of Texas? Why do you do what you do?
yeah. I feel like I was called to do it, man. Um, at the end of the day, I don't look at this as just a job. I don't look at this as just to sell another insurance policy. I look at this as trying to come alongside ministries. I don't care if it's a food bank, a church, a Christian school, a university, and again, trying to build something for them. Hope they never have to use it. I mean, that's just the reality. Because again, not only is it impactful if they have to use it, it also suspends operations and interruptions and all those kinds of things. But if I've done it correctly, they sleep at night, I sleep at night. Because the reality is that that's just what we're about. I mean, we jokingly say shining light to a dark, area. I think it's important. I think it is really important because again, you hear these things and these buzzwords of, oh, it's all risk, it covers everything, it's apples to apples, it's every policy is the same. It's not the same, man. It is not the same. And so having somebody in your corner to be your advocate, maybe to argue with underwriting a little bit on your behalf, that's okay. It's fun. But at the end of the day, I feel like I was called to do it, and I absolutely love what I do. And Lord willing, I'll be doing it for another 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know. I don't
Yes.
know. So
Yes.
yeah,
I want that for you too, and I want that
yeah.
for the churches you serve in Texas.
Thanks,
Zach
man.
Mize, senior agent and partner with Lightwell in the state of Texas. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you and to learn from you, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.
My thanks once again to Zach Mize, senior agent and partner for Lightwell in the state of Texas. I really appreciate the practical ways that he came at how a ministry can prepare for and respond to a catastrophic loss. I hope you got something from that. And I want to thank you for your time today. I know Zach mentioned this several times during the podcast conversation, but really it's important to have a trusted resource in your area you can bounce this conversation off of. If you don't have that, or you want to learn more, you can go to lightwell.com. There is a Lightwell Insurance Advisor in your area who would love to help your organization better prepare for losses of all kinds, even catastrophic ones. So until the next episode of the podcast, let's go and let it shine.